Town of Wappinger Zoning Board of Appeals. Could I please have everybody rise, take off your hats for the pledge? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Can I please have a roll call, B?
Bill Ford. Here. Mr. Hernandez.
Here.
Mr. Barr.
Here.
Mr. Lawrence.
Here. As everyone can see, we are missing one board member tonight. If anybody would like to have their case adjourned to a point of where there's a full board, that would be okay, because a 2-2 vote would be a no, just so everyone knows, okay? Acceptance of the minutes from January 28th, 2025. Did everyone read the minutes? Any other changes? Anything need to be done?
No questions.
Can I have a motion to accept?
Make a motion?
Second. All in favor? Aye. So accepted. Thank you. Public hearing, appeal number 247834, an area variance, David Freeman, seeking an area variance, section 24037, district regulations in an R80 zoning district, where the minimum lot size of an R80 zoning district is 80,000 square feet, 2 acres. The applicant was requesting a variance of 40,000 square feet, 1 acre. Where the minimum width size is an R80 zoning district is 200 square feet, the applicant is requesting a width of 100 feet. Where 40 feet to the side left property line is required, the applicant can provide 20 feet, thus requesting a variance of 20 feet. Where 40 feet to the side right property line is required, the applicant can provide 20 feet, thus requesting a variance of 20 feet. The property is located 1217 Route 376 and is identified as tax grid number 635801182912 in the town of Wappingers. Good evening, sir. Could I please have your name and address for the record?
David Freeman, 26 Sheldon Drive, Poughkeepsie, New York, 12603.
Good evening, Mr. Freeman. How are you tonight?
Good, how are you? I represent the Zukajas, the owner of the...
We need to open the meeting.
Sorry.
Thanks, guys. Any dope? We're going to open a public meeting. Can I please have a
Make a motion to open the public meeting?
second? All in favor?
Aye.
So carries. Now.
My name's Dave Freeman. I represent the Zukajas, the owner of the property. We're asking for 3 variances to construct a new home to replace the existing home. They would like a better house, and the existing house is an 1890s farmhouse about 50 feet from Route 376. As I joked last month, you know, it's got a good solid 7-foot ceiling on the first floor, and I can't stand up in the second floor. We could take part of it down and expand it, and we would still be here for a variance. From a construction standpoint, it makes a lot more sense to construct an energy-efficient property, one without a leaking basement, and then further back from the road. In order to do that, we have a substandard lot from at least 1890. It's 100 feet wide. The minimum requirement right now is 200 feet. In order to do that, I've drawn a house that is exactly 60 feet wide, so I can get 20 feet on either side, balancing it in the middle, which is again a 50% variance on either side. That should be it.
Yeah, we went out and saw the lot a couple of weeks ago.
Yep.
Know what you're talking about, know exactly what you're talking about. It is a long, what I like to refer to as a bowling alley lot, long and narrow. The house is pretty tight to the road. I mean, 2 cars parked in front of it, they were almost on the road. So can understand why you want to do what you want to do. Does anybody on the board have any questions for Mr. Freeman? And
Yeah, I mean, in my mind, the main issue here is that the site is not of an appropriate size for the zoning district, right, as you stated, and it's a pre-existing condition, which leads to, you know, there's almost no way to meet the side setbacks since it's meant to be 200 feet and you have 100 feet and you have half of what it's supposed to be in terms of lot width. And, you know, I think it's really, you know, I've been weighing if it's self-created or not, and in a lot of ways it's not, just because of the lot, you know, the reality of what the lot is. I'd personally be for this for that very reason.
okay.
And the house is also moving back into the lot, and that's actually higher ground from the front of the lot, so it's actually solving some of the water conditions that it has.
It is going to be constructed as slab on grade. The owner is actually a tile setter, so giving him a concrete floor will make him happy.
Oh, I mean, I think the other unique point for this site is that, the one side, when you're looking at it, on the right, is essentially wetlands, which would never be built upon. And it doesn't sound like there's any objections from the neighbor on the left
Not that I have known.
that we've heard.
I'm not too sure. There was a neighbor to the left, but
There is, I'm not sure if they live there full-time, so.
Yeah, they would seem to be the only ones that would be able to see it, but they seem like they were pretty much equally close to the property line.
correct. Anything else, Tom?
No.
Anything like that? Chris? Nothing else? Anyone in the public like to step up and talk about this application? And I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Can I please have a motion to either deny or accept this application?
I'll make a motion to accept the application. Again, for the reasons stated, it is a substandard lot in the R80 zoning district. The one side of the property does have wetlands. This would seem to be an upgrade overall for this site. The condition is not really self-created, since it would be difficult to meet the setback requirements with the lot size that is pre-existing. Going down the list. The benefit could potentially be achieved by other means, but I think you'd end up with a house that's severely compromised. It is not an undesirable change to the neighborhood. The request is substantial. There's no adverse environmental effect. If anything, it's the opposite, since you're moving the house out of a wet area. And the difficulty is, I think, arguably not self-created.
Second, please. I'll second. B, can I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Delacorte?
Yes.
Mr. Hernandez?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Lowenstein?
Yes. So the variance has been granted.
Thank you very much.
I believe you have some paperwork you're going to have to take care of at some point.
Yep. I've
And,
been for the years, so thank you.
but other than that, you move forward, so.
Thank you.
Let's see, PO number 257839, area variance, Charles Augustus Clese, Jr., and Brianna K. Troy, seeking an area variance, section 24037 and 24030B of district regulations in an R20 zoning district, where an accessory structure cannot be more than 800 square feet on an acre of land. The applicant is seeking a variance of 1,400 square feet, 30 by 40 garage, and 10 by 20 overhang, thus requesting a variance of 600 square feet. Where no more than 2 accessory buildings shall be permitted in any one-family residential district, the applicant has 2 existing structures and is seeking a variance to add a 3rd structure. The property is located at 9 Regency Drive and is identified by tax grid number 6357-01-040670 on .95 acres in the town of Wappingers. I'm sorry, I made a mistake with your last name,
All good,
sir.
all good.
How are you tonight?
I'm good, how are you?
I'd like a motion to open public meeting, please.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Please, sir, explain what you need.
Yep,
Why
my
you
name is
need it?
Charles Kless, I reside 9 Regency Drive. I'm looking for an area variance of 600 square foot to build a 30 by 40 garage with a 10 by 20 overhang, and also looking for a variance for a 3rd accessory structure. And just before we go forward, for the decision for the vote, when do I have to make that decision now? If I don't want to proceed with the vote?
I think before we vote, you have to make a decision.
Okay.
But we can
All right.
have a discussion before then.
Okay.
For the full board, is that what you're looking for, sir?
Yeah, just, I work 4 to 12, so I got to take a day every time I come to a meeting, so.
I mean, that would definitely be your decision.
Okay.
So we were out at the house Saturday morning. Your neighborhood is quite a tight neighborhood. The houses are, I know you live in that pizza pie piece of land, which is pretty, pretty tight on either side of your house. We did take a walk into the backyard, and I have to be honest with you, it's quite an open area, Your neighbors can see into your yard very easily. Even the neighbors on the next road over can pretty much see into your yard pretty easily. I think we addressed the fact that we felt that this garage was rather large, a rather large garage to have in your backyard,
Yep.
in that kind of a neighborhood setting. Would you be considering, or would you consider maybe making the garage smaller?
I'm kind of stuck on that size. I'd be willing to get rid of the overhang, just because I don't really want to spend all the money to, pay extra insurance, pay extra taxes, to not be happy with what I'm building.
So just so you know, the board usually goes by like what we call a 10, 20, 30% rule, where, that's our normal looking at the size of things.
Yep.
10%, 20%, 30% larger. What you're seeking is like a, quite a bit. I'm not that great with math, but it's, the percentage would be 800 is 1,400, is that 600 square feet? It's,
So roughly 75%.
it's like 60%, right?
70,
Something like that, 70%.
75,
It-
yeah.
75%.
It's quite a large, it's quite a large variance you're asking us for. I'm not sure how the rest of the board feels. I feel that it would really not fit your neighborhood. It would not, it would really look out of place in your neighborhood. That's the best way I can explain it. I don't know how else, I'm,
Yeah, the garage you're asking for is bigger than the house?
No.
Well, the house
House
is
is 40 by 40.
24 by 40 according to the survey, no?
House is 40 by 40. There was an addition.
Okay. So similar in size to the house. Again, it's going to feel like there's a second structure of equal mass to the house on the site, and it is a skinny lot, especially at the front. I'm not personally opposed to, I understand why you want a detached garage.
Right.
That portion of the variance, I'm not an objection to. But, for me personally, it would be a no vote on the size.
Okay.
Thank you, by the way, for providing a diagram.
Yeah, not a problem.
And as John said, we all were out there, and we did see that there's quite a few implements and
Yeah.
vehicles, and
Yeah, yeah.
it'd be nice for you to have them all enclosed like you like, but I think we discussed when we were out there, would you be amenable to bringing the size down a little bit because of the percentage of variance that you're requesting
Right.
on that particular space, that
Okay.
where you're located.
Right, right.
We've granted some of these before, but they're in the woods. They're
On much larger sites?
much larger sites,
much
Things-
larger.
things of that nature.
What would the board be thinking for size?
Percentage? Is that what you said?
Yeah, either square footage or
Square
percentage.
footage. That's a good question. What would we like? Can we discuss that now, or do we want to?
I think we can if we'd like to. You were seeking a 600 square foot variance. 100 square feet would definitely be no problem, you know what I mean?
Right.
We'd probably, if it was 900 square feet, something in about that. I understand it kind of, we do know all the stuff you had. We saw,
Yep, yep.
we know, we know what you're at. But just the whole point of that, that garage would just, I really think it would just really be so disturbing in that neighborhood.
I
It
think
just,
me personally, I think it would look better than 10 cars in the driveway, but that's just me. You said 100 square foot?
I'm more than willing to give you, the adjournment, if you'd like to go home and talk about this, like to think about it.
I personally would encourage you to think about
Yep.
this.
Yeah, I would too. Just,
Like often people get kind of, they
Yeah,
want a yes, so they agree to things.
Yep.
which is not always the best.
No, I
So,
get it.
you know, it's a big decision. You take your time, figure out what works for you.
All right.
And until we vote, you know, this process is open.
Right.
And you're not paying the town more money.
Yep.
I just need to bring something up. It has come to my attention also. You have a lot of things in the backyard, a boat, looks like a camper or a pop-up. What are all these things?
I
in
got
the
a
back?
snowmobile trailer and a boat
Okay, so
and implements for the tractor.
in the town of Wappinger, you're allowed to have a boat, a trailer. You can't have all these things out in the back. So I understand, or at least I'm assuming the garage, or whatever you build, is to put some of this stuff away.
Yeah.
So whatever the garage is that you eventually build,
Mhm.
some of these things, they have to go away.
I understand.
Or when the building inspectors come out as you're building it, that's going to be a property maintenance issue.
All right.
So, and just for the record, there is some flood zone in the back.
Yeah, the back
So
far
when you
right
go
corner.
to build it, be careful.
Yep.
You also have a 20-foot easement across the back, which this will not impede, because you're not going back that far. And you have a 10%, I think it's a water line easement
On the, yeah.
on the right.
Yep.
So just as a homeowner, just so you're aware, you have those
All right,
easements.
appreciate it.
Right, I think we saw the drainage line in the back.
Right.
Kind of figured there'd probably be an easement on the property.
Sometimes the homeowners unfortunately don't even know that, because
Yes.
it's not on their survey, so I like to point it out.
I think we mentioned that when we were out there that there might have been.
I think the
I think
survey
it is on the
has it, right?
survey.
So, does anyone have anything else they'd like to ask? Dave,
I
no?
think I'm good, so the procedure now is,
Well, the procedure now is, what would you like to do, sir? Would you like an adjournment of this?
I would. I need some time to think about it.
And how long of an adjournment would you like? Would you like to come back next time after that? Would you?
Let me just look at my calendar quick.
I mean, the only other thing to consider, and I don't think it's possible on this site, but if the garage is attached to the house.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Via a heated
Yeah.
vestibule of some kind, it's
Yep.
part of the house, it's not a separate structure.
All right.
It's kind of hard because of the pool.
Yeah, next meeting's
The
25th?
pool's in the way, yeah.
So let me just give you the dates, because you said you work evenings. So there's
That's not
the
mine.
25th of February, the 11th of March, or the 25th of March.
Okay. 25th should be fine, of February.
Okay.
25th of March?
No, he wants the 25th of February.
25th of February? Okay, so we'll see you on the 25th in 2 weeks.
Make an adjournment.
we have to make a motion to adjourn.
I have to make a motion to adjourn the public meeting, correct?
This is going to look like the material.
So I'll make that motion. Can I have a second, please?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So then we'll see you in 2 weeks, sir,
Sounds
okay?
good. Thank you.
Just one
And-
question. Did you get visuals of what this is going to look like? Because I'm just wondering if you could get visuals of, say, 200 square feet small or 100 square feet, because a lot of your variance is in the overhang as well, so
Yeah.
that's going to take off.
That's why I said I was willing to get rid of the overhang.
Yeah, and then maybe if you brought in comparable pictures, that would help.
Yeah, I actually might have some I can see.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'll see you in 2 weeks. That was February 20.
You know, that's big.
Okay. That's what I'm gonna hold on to. Appeal number 247837, area variance, Joshua Indorf, seeking an area variance, section 24037, district regulations in our 2040 zoning district, where 20 feet to the side yard right property line is required. The applicant can provide 1.5 feet for the legalization of an existing barn, thus requesting a variance of 18.5 feet. The property is located at 2505 Route 9D on 0.56 acres and is identified as tax grade number 6157-01-243907 in the town of Wappingers. Good evening.
Good evening,
Name?
Chairman and members of the Zoning Board of Appeals. My name is Jessica Zalen. I'm here tonight on behalf of the applicant, Joshua Indorf. I'm with the law firm of Cuddy and Fader.
So I'd like to make a motion to open a public meeting, right?
Yes.
Can I have a second?
No, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. I always forget to open a public meeting. I'm sorry. I apologize. Go ahead, what do you need?
Sure. So I'm here tonight in connection with Mr. Endorf's request for variance relief to legalize the existing conditions on his property to maintain the existing barn in its current location and configuration. The property itself is, as you mentioned, located at 2505 Route 9D in the town of Wappingers. It is actually surrounded on all sides, I believe, by municipal property. Reese Park is to the rear. There's a parking lot on the north side, and the park entry, a small entryway to the park on the south side. Other than the municipal neighbors, Mr. Endorf was able to obtain letters of support and approval recommendations from two of his neighbors further to the south, which were submitted to the town on the 6th of February. I do have a copy here if anyone would like to see that submission. Otherwise, just wanted to make note that that was provided. As we discussed at the last meeting, this property is located just a short distance from the village. At its shortest distance, it's only 100 feet from the village boundary. That being said, it is located within the town. It's currently developed with an existing two-story multifamily residence and this existing accessory barn, which was constructed initially, both of which were constructed initially in 1871. The barn itself has been modified since. However, it's been in this existing configuration since long before the applicant purchased the property. He purchased the property in December 2023, and based upon our review of historical aerial images of the parcel, the barn has been in its current configuration since at least the 1980s. The applicant recently submitted a building permit application to the town. During the town's review of that application, it was discovered that that portion of the barn in the rear had been constructed without a permit. Again, we think it was sometime in the 80s. It was not any time recently. That being said, it is a condition that the town asked us to legalize in connection with his building permit application. The applicant is seeking to perform some repair and renovation work to his barn only at this time. This work is required for him to get insurance coverage on the barn. It's currently excluded from his coverage. And we're hopeful that this board will entertain a variance to maintain the existing condition on the property so that he could proceed with getting that permit. As I noted, as we're all aware, the rear section of the barn does not comply with the 20-foot setback requirement. It's located only 1.5 feet from the property line, but we respectfully request that the benefit to the applicant by granting this variance would clearly outweigh any possible detriment to the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood or community that could be occasioned by such grant, especially as this is purely to maintain an existing condition.
The front of the barn is 0.9 feet
Yes,
away, right?
that's correct.
And the rear at the further extent is 1.5. But the
yes.
portion we're legalizing is the square at the back, right?
Yes, we're legalizing the square at the back. The front
So
portion.
isn't it some amount actually between those two numbers then that we're legalizing? Because since it's at an angle, it's angling from 0.9 to 1.5?
I will take a quick look at the survey and confirm where that line is drawn, showing us that 1.5.
Barbara, are we not legalizing the 0.9 since it's, we're saying it's
Well, that was,
historic?
that pre-exists zoning, so
Even though
probably
it's
for the
CMU
record,
foundation
we
wall, looks like
should.
it's been completely rebuilt.
But I see what you're saying. It does kind of slope from 0.9 to 1.5, and it's not the dimension that, the dimension at the front of that rear extension is not clearly identified on the survey. If the board were to entertain legalizing a 0.9, we would be comfortable with that. But as we had discussed 2 weeks ago.
I would just build on that the foundation on that side of the barn was of newer block. It was a newer block foundation, so I was wondering that
It's rubble
myself.
on the other side, right?
The other side was pile rock, all the way on the right side. Well, looking from the rear of the barn, all the way on, I'm looking from the front on the left, it looked like the left side of the barn was the old section. The right side of the barn all looked like it had a newer foundation built underneath it. So I was just wondering that myself about the 0.9 and the 1.5. Because I think it's to help you, not to help, you know what I mean?
Understood. Yeah, the rear section of the barn is what we understand to have been constructed in the 1980s or thereabouts, and everything in front we understand to have been constructed in the 1870s or thereabouts. So whatever this board is comfortable with in terms of what relief they'd like to grant.
I mean, again, we're going off what we saw, and, the whole side being CMU is not, 1870s.
Right, so we don't
CMU.
know what the numbers where it
Yeah.
ended when it was built in the 1800s to where it started.
Right.
So the survey only shows the points at both ends, but were you to grant the variance for the newer back, I would just make note that the front predates zoning and is included in the variance without.
So, I mean, with the 0.9 at the front, it means that the roof overhang is essentially over the property line.
Yes, the eave of the building, I believe, is 1 foot. So that exceeds 0.9. But again, that's
Which
on the
I know
front
we
of
had a problem with, we had one other property that had that, remember?
Yeah.
And that was a huge issue. Because
was.
you're over the property, which means you're shedding water into somebody else's property. In this case, it's the city's property, but
Well, I'll just, if I can just remind the board that front portion is a pre-existing non-conforming structure. So we're not seeking variance relief for the front of the barn, the area that is 0.9 inches, or 0.9 feet from the property line. That is a legal structure.
I think in our head, we're partly thinking that maybe it's not, because it's of newer construction, the entire foundation on that side.
But not only that, I mean, if you come in, I mean, I know it's the 1.5 in the rear, but if you come halfway down the building, what is it there? Is it 1.5? Is it
Could be 1.
1?
Could be
Because it goes down, all the way down to 0.9 inches. So all I'm saying is, to protect you, I don't want to give you the improper variance and then
Understood.
saying, oh, no, that's wrong because the property line comes in at an angle or the barn's turned at slight of an angle and we're not giving you the right variance because
Yes.
it's not being asked for, basically, is what I think, am I,
Yeah, no, I think that's accurate. And, on a side note, it's just difficult when it's this close because it's like, how do you do maintenance, right? Like you're inherently on city property.
Sure.
When you're doing anything to that sidewall, right? So,
Right.
you have to paint that sidewall, you're assembling scaffolding on city property, right? Like that's not great.
no, but.
I don't quite know the legalities of that. Would they have to get permission?
Well, is it,
So that would, being the length of time that we believe it has been, I'm just looking, oh, I see, the property next door was sold to the town very recently. Because I'm looking at parcel access, it had a private
happened a few
name.
months
so I see.
There was a house in that, I think, burned down.
We
Yeah.
actually took it down a few months
It was
ago.
demolished, yeah.
So essentially, that becomes a matter between the town and the property owner, but as property owner, not for this board, because it's an existing condition. In other words, if the town had objections to that, I think they would need to voice that if there was concern about runoff or other things coming off of that. But you can indicate also in the variance that you are, not by the variance granting any approval for any overhang that
Well, we're not allowed to approve anything hanging over the property line.
you can't, but you can
so.
also make it clear that it shouldn't be deemed as an implicit.
I'm just more worried about this 1.5 variance that they're seeking is not the proper variance that they're seeking. I don't know if the building is included, halfway down the building, if that's the middle of the building, and it's more of a 1-foot variance or an 11 or 13-inch variance. That's all I'm more worried about. That we say, yeah, you give the 1.5, and then you come back and say, well, that variance is not right, and then we're starting from the beginning again.
right, I understand your point. I think we were requesting the 1.5 to echo what was indicated in the denial for the building permit. We are comfortable requesting a larger variance up to the 0.9.
I think.
I mean, if it's a greater variance, we'd have to technically republish, although it's minor. I know Jim has used to let stuff pass,
.9.
It's not great.
And I know you've been asked this before, ma'am, and I'm just going to come out and ask you now.
Sure.
What does he want to use this barn for?
Right now, all I know, honestly, is that he wants to make it watertight. He wants to make it a viable structure. Right now, he has an uninsured large barn on his property. He wants to do the repairs. He wants to do the maintenance work. He's applied for that building permit. That's all that I know that he's proceeded with at the moment.
So you're not really sure what he wants to...
I don't know if there will be other applications coming down the pipeline. That's not the subject of this application, and that's not something that I know at this time. As we discussed a few weeks ago, we did have a prior meeting to discuss a potential reuse of the barn, but my client has not elected to move forward with plans to reflect that use or any other sort of, he hasn't directed us to start preparing applications. We're not moving forward on that proposal at the moment. I don't know if he will one day in the future elect to do so, but right now all we're doing is trying to get this legalized as it stands.
So, I mean, I feel like this happens with this board, where people see us as the easier board to get through. So they come to us initially to get approval, and then what's finally submitted to the town looks nothing like what was maybe presented to us. You know, if we did approve this, I think we would want to condition that we're approving it as it is now. We're approving it with its current use. You know, we're not approving a residential use. We're not approving a commercial use. We're approving it as storage use only. And if the client wanted to change that, he would have to come back to us.
I understand the point. I do think that the use of a structure would be within the purview of the planning board rather than the zoning board. That being said, I do imagine that if he were to come back for any, I am aware that if he were to want to change the use of this specific structure to a residential use, a number of variances would be required from the provisions of
I mean,
the town
we look at
code.
things, we look at the full picture, right?
Of course.
So a residence being there is different than a storage garage
Of
being
course.
there. There's different setbacks in the code. Like, we're looking at it as the way it stands now. So I just don't want your client to basically like, oh, well, now I have to go back to them because, you know, my plan all along was to convert to residential, but I want to get this first, make sure I didn't have to tear it down.
What he wants to do now is repair his barn to have it be this existing structure in this existing spot with an insurable, watertight, winterized structure.
Okay, so if we conditioned that the approval was for a storage structure only, that would be acceptable on your...
Well, can I, if I may, during our meeting, the meeting that my office had with Ms. Roberti and Mrs. Valk last year, we discussed a potential avenue that we would consider if the applicant were to proceed with a residential use in that property. As I said, we don't know if he's going to. As of today, there are no plans in front of me that I would be able to share with any of you. But that being said, there is one provision of the code that we were discussing and saying if he were to proceed, this would be the provision that we would proceed under. And I note that that provision would require a host of variances from this board. So you would necessarily have to see the application if it were to be transitioned to a residential use at any time.
Okay.
So are we allowed to condition or not?
You can consider the condition, but I think the first item you need to determine is, do you feel comfortable granting the 1.5, or do you feel that you need to re-advertise to grant the 0.9 for the full structure? I mean, I think the zoning administrator has, I'm sorry, that's not your official title, but has determined that the nonconformity, predates zoning. So I do think it would be appropriate and legal if you're addressing that back section. Now, I think I heard someone say that there were some concerns that the front portion looked like it may have had some work and maybe it's not as old as
Well, I mean, the entire front portion and the back was all of newer CMU construction for the lower portion, right?
The entire north side.
The entire side. And if you look at the other side, you can see the old rubble foundation walls, which I would anticipate were probably from 1870. So did they pull out the rubble foundation walls and replace it in kind with CMU at some point in the 80s?
So if that is a concern, then the cleanest way would be to re-advertise for the .9 and just clean it up, so there's never a question. The file will be buttoned up.
I mean,
as far as
It's
that
clear that the
goes.
foundation at that .9 point is newer than 1870,
oh, without a doubt.
without a doubt.
Without a doubt. I mean, that's block foundation that was probably put in, you know, when did they start using block primarily, right? 70s, 60s? I mean,
Which would be
it's not,
post-
you
Which
know,
would be post-zoning. So I think if there's any of a question, then clean it up.
right. So, I mean, I'm trying to protect your client as well as, you
I
know,
understand.
us.
Even if we were only to consider the added portion at the back, it still sits at an angle to the property line?
Yes.
And so there is a tighter portion than 1.5 feet.
That's correct.
So even if we were just to consider that, you'd still want to change that number?
Yes, understood. I appreciate the point, and I appreciate you highlighting this for us. As I said, the 1.5 is something that we were just echoing from documents, from the denial letter, from the building permit denial that the town issued. If this board thinks a larger variance is a larger variance is necessary, we are certainly happy to request that and revise as we need.
I think the larger one, short of having the surveyor go out and look at the back portion, which, again, as you're all discussing, there's no way to know what part was really redone. I mean, this could have been a one-car garage at some point in 1870 that just kept morphing into something bigger.
But we were trying to determine by looking at it what actually happened.
Right.
Because there's a new part and an old part, and we can't see it. We can
Right.
see, if you're facing the garage from the road, you can see the left side is older construction, but the right side, you cannot tell.
And there's no break in the foundation, you know, between that rear addition and the sidewall. It's continuous CMU.
Yeah.
So, you
it's
know, whenever that rear
possible-
addition went in, it was when they likely put in the CMU along that whole side.
Sure.
Which maybe when
And
they
maybe it
got
was because
closer
the
to
rubble
the
was falling
side.
down and they had to do it. I mean,
Right. It's definitely possible that a prior owner could have made some renovations to both sections of the barn. Our investigation of the property is really limited to the town's records and the historic aerial photos, where we're able to see that the structure stayed in roughly the same place since as far back as we can go with respect to that front portion, and since the 1980s with respect to that rear portion. That being said, all of that did predate my client's ownership of the property, and here we are.
So it's
seeking
possible,
legalization.
if, like you said, parts of it have like the rock foundation, it could have been made wider in the 80s to support, you know, a better foundation. It might have been made a few feet wider. But again, with the records and even with the GIS pictures, there's no way of knowing where the property line was. This might have been 5 feet shorter and they just made it wider. I mean, we just don't know.
Right,
We can
and-
only go by what the current survey
Yeah, I'm-
shows.
Pulling up the aerials
Yeah, they're
and,
awful.
they're not good to determine, you know, I was trying to get a sense of whether or not it looked like it was widened, but they get very grainy, so I think it would just be easier to kind of clean it up, have the .9, then there's never a question in the future.
That's fair. I understand that that would be a better, cleaner request. Seeing as the difference between .9 and 1.5 is very minor, is this board able to entertain granting the .9 distance variance today, or is a renoticing required?
We'd have to renotice it.
Yeah,
Renotice.
technically,
larger.
anytime the variance gets larger, you can always
Right.
reduce it without re-advertising, but when it gets larger,
So if we said it's 2 feet instead of 1.5, we could do it. But
Then
since
okay.
it's 1.5 going down to 9,
yeah, okay.
we can't entertain it tonight.
Okay.
But I think taking this adjournment for yourself would be a smart thing to do, because, you know, we don't want to get all of a sudden coming back and saying, hey, you didn't get the right variance, this is no good for you.
No, I understand. I think that we are ready to move forward with the 0.9 request in whatever form this board, whatever the process is that this board needs us to follow.
since the neighbor that would be the most affected by this is the town, should we send notice to the appropriate person in the town,
They
which is
already-
maybe you?
They received notice.
Yeah.
But we always receive notice whenever a property abuts us.
Okay.
So we did receive notice for the 1.5, and we will receive notice for the 0.9. And we do have time to republish for the 25th.
Yeah, and presumably an agreement would have to be reached when the work is done for them to basically utilize public property to make the repairs, which is not our purview, but would be on your end.
Sure.
And it doesn't sound like the town objects to the fact that that would have to happen, based upon,
I haven't heard anything from
Okay.
anybody above us.
So just by our view of the barn, we thought the whole right side was new.
Okay.
Not just the rear portion of the right side, but by looking at it, it kind of looked like the whole right side of the barn was new. And that's why we were bringing this subject up, because we were like a little confused about where the actual barn was, what was added on,
Understood.
so, and I don't want, like I said, I don't want it to come back later that there's a problem.
No, point taken. I
So,
appreciate you bringing this to our attention.
and I think we would, like we said, condition that it's for the current use, right? And I think we would condition that the eaves should not overhang the property line, which would need to be confirmed by
Okay.
when they're doing
So
work.
would you then would we then be asking him to remove a portion of the structure?
I don't know. Without getting out there and measuring it, I mean.
It's my understanding
It should hang over the property line significantly.
Well, it's my understanding that the eave is 1 foot, so the difference between 1 foot and 0.9 is de minimis, but it is something. So are we saying that we need to carve a portion of the eave?
So we have conditioned that in the past. On that other property, he carved the eaves to be flush with the siding because it was overhanging significantly, and the neighbor on that property was complaining. I think we should be consistent.
I don't know if anybody's complaining here, though. I mean, I don't,
I think we then come into an issue of what was pre-existing non-conforming and what is not. If we're legalizing the 0.9, do we lose the pre-existing non-conforming status such that we then have to make other structural modifications to the barn?
I can check with the town if they have an issue with it overhanging by 0.3.
I think it's not it's 0.1,
Okay, 0.1.
right?
So
So
it's
it's,
like itsy-bitsy.
yeah.
But I'll check on that. But we can republish for the 25th for the
Yeah,
0.1.
I mean, I think the town should weigh in, since they're the ones impacted by this.
I'll ask the supervisor to weigh in.
And like Dave said about the maintenance is going to take place.
Right. Even whatever renovation, they will be on the town's property.
Yeah.
So I will speak to the supervisor and get a memo sent to you on his take on this before the
That-
next meeting.
Those conversations would be with the town as property owner, correct? Rather than
Yes.
with the decision-making.
No, as the property
Correct.
owner, and they do have plans for that property with
Yeah, I mean, that property is basically a parking lot, right? So, I mean, if you're 0.9 away, that means a car could be parked 1.5 away, depending upon the plans for that property, right? I mean, I think it's worth running
there
this
was a
past
little
the
green,
town.
there was some green space between the parking lot and the house, so there was, I would say probably 12, 15 feet maybe? I would agree. About 12 to 15. So, I mean, I'm not worried that it's.
Is that totally done, that?
I think what they did with the parking lot is what they did with the parking lot. I don't think there's going to be any add-on to that point. I know the split rail fence was done by one of the Boy Scouts for his Eagle project, so that's a beautiful little thing out there. But, the property's very nice sitting next to you, and I know, and I understand that your client wants to fix up the barn, make it look good and all that, and so we understand. We just want to make sure that we're doing the right thing here, We don't want to make have it come back, right? So, at that point, I'm going to make a motion to adjourn this public hearing for the 23rd of February? 25th of February.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So we'll see you on the 25th.
And this
It'll get
adjournment-
republished.
Just for the record, this adjournment is so that we can republish for the new measurement.
Okay?
Say again, Barb, The adjournment is for...
It's the dead of winter anyway. I don't think anybody's doing much work on outside of buildings right now.
Yeah, I think it's a hard time, but I think he is anxious to move forward as soon as he can. So yes, I think it is better to do this correctly and cleanly, so I appreciate your input and thank you for your time.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. So at this point, I think we're going to make a motion to go into executive session. However,
Actually, you're going to close the meeting. We're having an attorney-client meeting, but because attorney-client privilege is an exception from open meetings law, you're not obligated to do it during the actual meeting, but just for the benefit of the public who's here.
It's not an adjournment, though, is it?
No, we're closing the meeting.
yeah, so entertain a motion to close the meeting.
I'll make a motion to close the meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we're done tonight?